The Greenbrier Ghost. There are stories woven deep into the hills of Appalachia, stories whispered across porches at dusk, carried gently on the wind that slides between the mountains. Some tales fade. Others grow stranger as the years go by. And then, there are those rare stories that refuse to die at all, stories that seem to breathe. Among them is one that stands apart, a case where justice was said to have been delivered not by the living, but by the dead. This is the true and haunting story of Zona Heaster Shue, the young woman whose voice rose from beyond the grave, and changed American legal history forever. This quiet, lingering tale is perhaps the most famous Appalachian ghost folklore story, yet everything about it traces back to one winter afternoon in 1897, when the snow lay unmoving over Greenbrier County, West Virginia. So let us step back into that time, into those mountains where the trees were bare, the towns were quiet, and a mystery waited beneath the cold, pale sky. Settle in, breathe slow, and follow this path through an old tragedy, where love, suspicion, and something far stranger would collide in a way that no one could predict. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1: The Quiet Valley. Greenbrier County in the late 1800s was a quiet place, tucked into the slopes and valleys of southern Appalachia. The world moved slowly there. People knew the shape of every ridge, the rhythm of every season, and the names of every family within miles. It was a land of wood smoke, hard work, and long winters. In the small community of Livesey's Mill lived Mary Jane Heaster and her daughter, Zona, a young woman known for her bright spirit. Zona was 23, kind, soft-spoken, and gentle in a way that made her instantly loved by those around her. But she also possessed a quiet independence, the kind that made her want to carve her own life in a place where choices were few. In the autumn of 1896, a man arrived in town like a sudden wind. His name was Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue, though most simply called him Trout. He was handsome, broad-shouldered, confident, an outsider looking to start anew as a blacksmith. No one knew much about him. He said he had come to Greenbrier for a fresh beginning. People believed him. Perhaps they wanted to. Within weeks, Trout Shue and Zona met. Within months, they married. Some whispered that the courtship had been too quick. Others sensed something unsettling in the man's sharp eyes. But Zona was happy, glowingly so. And for her mother, Mary Jane, that was enough. At least for a while. Winter arrived. Heavy snow fell. And the quiet of the valley deepened. Chapter 2: The Day of Silence. January 23, 1897. The morning was cold, the kind of cold that settles deep into the bones of the Appalachian hills. The sky was colorless, the wind still. Trout Shue had left home early for work, and he'd asked a local boy, Anderson Jones, to stop by the house later to see if Zona needed anything. When the boy arrived sometime after noon, he noticed at once that something felt wrong. The door was slightly open, and the house was still too still. He called Zona's name once, twice. No answer. He stepped inside. There, at the foot of the stairs, lay Zona's body, stretched across the floor. Her hair spread like a dark halo. Her dress neat, as though placed carefully. Her hands resting on her stomach. Not a single thing around her seemed disturbed. The boy ran. Moments later, Trout Shue appeared, breathless, arriving with a fury and a panic that seemed to blur together. And from that moment on, the story shifted. Chapter 3: A Husband's Grief, or Something Else. When the local doctor, Dr. Knapp, finally arrived, Trout Shue had already carried Zona's body upstairs. He had washed her, redressed her, and placed her on the bed, arranging her as though she were sleeping peacefully. He wrapped a high, stiff collar around her neck and tied a bright scarf in place. Dr. Knapp found this strange. Very strange. But each time he tried to examine Zona's neck, Trout Shue pulled her close, cradling her head protectively, sobbing and raging with grief so loudly that the doctor could barely think. He declared the cause of death everlasting faint, a vague, meaningless term used when answers were unclear and the living were too distraught to be questioned. But one person refused to accept it. Zona's mother. Mary Jane Hester felt something twisting inside her, something cold and sharp. Since the moment Trout Shue had arrived in her daughter's life, Mary Jane had sensed something wrong, something hidden. She could never explain it. She simply felt it. And now, seeing her daughter dead with no explanation, that feeling turned into certainty. Something had happened. Something unnatural. Something awful. And she believed, with every breath, that Trout Shue had taken her daughter's life. Chapter 4: The Nights of the Ghost. After the funeral, Mary Jane Hester carried home the sheet that had been placed inside Zona's coffin. Still numb from loss, she washed it in a basin of warm water and watched as the clear water turned blood red. She gasped, pulling the sheet back. The water went pink, then crimson, then dark. No matter how she washed, the stain could not be removed. From that moment on, something began to stir around her home. At night, the rooms felt colder. Objects shifted. And Mary Jane felt watched. She prayed for answers. She begged for the truth. And then, one night, she claimed Zona came. At first, it was just a presence, a feeling at the edge of the room. Then a soft glow, like frost catching moonlight. Then a shape. A figure. Her daughter. Zona stood before her mother, pale and quiet, her eyes sorrowful. And she spoke. Her voice, Mary Jane later said, was like a whisper carried on winter air. She told her mother everything. How Trout Shue became angry one evening when she had not prepared meat for supper. How he advanced on her in a rage. How his hands closed around her neck. How he snapped it. Mary Jane said the ghost turned her head all the way around completely backward to show exactly what he had done. For 4 nights, the ghost returned. 4 times, she told the story. 4 times, she begged for justice. By the time the haunting ceased, Mary Jane Hester was no longer grieving in silence. She had a mission. A purpose. And a story she was prepared to tell anyone who would listen. Chapter 5: Doubts begin to spread. At first, people laughed politely or looked at Mary Jane with wary eyes. A ghost? A confession from beyond the grave? Such things belonged to whispers, not courts. But over time, her certainty began to unsettle the town. Her unwavering focus. Her calm recounting. Her absolute conviction that Trout Shue had murdered her daughter. And slowly, others began to admit that they too felt uneasy. Many had noticed the husband's strange behavior, his refusal to let anyone near Zona's body, the forced collar around her neck, the rushed funeral. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became concern. Eventually, the prosecutor agreed to examine the body. And when Zona Heaster Shue was exhumed, the truth finally rose to the surface. Chapter 6: The Autopsy. The examination took hours. Doctors worked slowly, carefully. And at last, they uncovered what Mary Jane believed all along. Zona's neck had been broken. Her windpipe was crushed. Her ligaments torn. Her neck twisted completely, almost dislocated. The official cause of death: murder by strangulation. And so, Trout Shue was arrested. He maintained his innocence. He called the accusations nonsense. He claimed Mary Jane was hysterical, overcome with grief. And then, the trial began. Chapter 7: The Trial of the Century. The courthouse in Greenbrier County filled beyond capacity. People arrived from neighboring towns, eager to hear the strange case that had now become a national curiosity. Trout Shue's past was laid out before the court. He'd been married twice before. One wife died mysteriously. The other left him in fear. But the moment that would be remembered for generations came when Mary Jane Heaster took the stand. The defense attorney made a grave mistake. He asked her directly about the ghost, thinking he could discredit her. He expected hesitation, perhaps embarrassment. Instead, Mary Jane spoke clearly, calmly, unwaveringly. "I saw my daughter's ghost. She came to me and told me how she died." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. What should have destroyed her credibility, instead mesmerized the jury. Her sincerity was undeniable. Her conviction unshaken. And though the law did not acknowledge ghosts, the jury acknowledged something else. Mary Jane believed every word she said. And that belief carried weight. On July 11, 1897, Erasmus Trout Shue was found guilty of murder. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. Trout Shue was sentenced to life in prison, where he died after a few years. He never confessed. Never showed remorse. Never spoke a word about what happened that day. Mary Jane Heaster returned to her quiet life. She never sought fame. Never profited from the story. She simply believed she had carried out her daughter's final request. Zona's grave remains in Greenbrier County, marked by a stone that speaks quietly of the past. In memory of Zona Heaster Shue, Greenbrier Ghost. To this day, travelers place flowers on her grave. Some leave notes. Some pray. Some simply stand and wonder. And every year, people still say that on cold winter nights, the valley holds a hush, as though remembering. And so ends the haunting tale of the Greenbrier Ghost, the only case in American history where the testimony of a spirit through the unwavering voice of a grieving mother led to a murder conviction. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, whether the supernatural truly touched that quiet Appalachian town, there is one truth that remains. A mother's love can cross any distance. Even the distance between life and death. Thank you for walking through this slow, calm, atmospheric retelling of one of the strangest stories in American folklore, an unforgettable Appalachian ghost folklore story that continues to echo across time.